Chapter 1 Queen Vashti disobeyed King Xerxes. King Xerxes of Persia lived in his capital city of Susa and ruled 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. During the third year of his rule, Xerxes gave a big dinner for all his and officers. The governors and leaders of the provinces were also invited, and even the commanders of Persia and Median armies came. For 180 days he showed off his wealth and spent a lot of money to impress his guests with the greatness of his kingdom. At the end of this time, King Xerxes gave another dinner and invited everyone in the city of Susa, no matter who they were. The eating and drinking lasted 7 days in the beautiful palace gardens. The area was decorated with blue and white cotton curtains tied back with purple linen cords that ran through silver rings fastened to marble columns. Couches of gold and silver rested on pavement that had all kinds of designs made from costly bright colored stones and marble and mother of pearl. The guests drank from gold cups, and each cup had a different design. The king was generous and said to them, "Drink all you want." Then he told his servant, "Keep their cups full." While the men were enjoying themselves, Queen Vashti gave the women a big dinner inside the royal palace. By the seventh day, King Xerxes was feeling happy because of so much wine, and he asked his 7 personal servants, Bihuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Jizthar, and Carcass, to bring Queen Vashti to him. The king wanted her to wear her crown and let his people and his officers see how beautiful she was. The king's servant told Queen Vashti what he had said, but she refused to go to him, and this made him terribly angry. The king called in the 7 highest officers of Persia and Media. They were Karsana, Shertar, Admata, Tarshish, Mersena, and Menucan. These men were very wise and understood all the laws and customs of the country, and the king always asked them what they thought about such matters. The king said to them, "Queen Vashti refused to come to me when I sent my servant for her. What does the law say I should do about that?" The Memucans told the king and the officers, "Your Majesty, Queen Vashti has not only embarrassed you, but she has insulted your officers and everyone else in all the province. The women in the kingdom will hear about this, and they will refuse to respect their husbands. They will say, 'If Queen Vashti doesn't obey her husband, why should we?'" Before this day is over, the wives of the officers of Persian media will find out what Queen Baset has done, and they will refuse to obey their husbands. They ought to respect their husband, and their husband will be angry with them. Your Majesty, if you agree, you should write for the Medes and Persians a law that can never be changed. This law will keep Queen Basset from ever seeing you again. Then you could let someone who respects you be queen in her place. When the women in your great kingdom hear about this new law, they will respect their husband, no matter if they are rich or poor. King Xerxes and his officers liked what Memucan had said, and he sent letters to all of his provinces. Each letter was written in the language of the province to which it was sent, and it said that husbands should be in charge of their wives and children. Esther 2. Esther becomes queen. After a while, King Xerxes got over being angry, but he kept thinking about what Basit had done and the law that he had written because of her. Then the king's personal servant said, Your Majesty, a search must be made to find you some beautiful young women. You can select officers in every province to bring them to the place where you keep your wives in the capital city of Susa. Put your servant Haggai in charge of them, since that is his job. He can see to it that they are given the proper beauty treatment. Then let the young woman who pleased you must take Vazet's place as queen. King Xerxes liked these suggestions, and he followed them. At this time, a Jew named Mordecai was living in Susa. His father was a Jair, and his grandfather Shimei was the son of Kish from the tribe of Benjamin. Kish was one of the people that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from Jerusalem when he took King Jeconiah of Judah to Babylonia. Mordecai had a very beautiful cousin named Esther, whose Hebrew name was Hadassah. He had raised her as his own daughter after her father and mother died. When the king orders to search for beautiful women, many were taken to the king's palace in Susa. The Esther was one of them. Haggai was put in charge of all the women, and from the first day, Esther was his favorite. He began her beauty treatment at once. He also gave her plenty of food and 7 special maids from the king's palace, and they had the best rooms. Mordecai had warned Esther not to tell anyone that was a Jew. He was a Jew, and she obeyed him. He was anxious to see how Esther was getting along and to learn that had happened to her. So each day he was walk back and forth in front of the court where the women lived. The young women were given beauty treatment for 1 whole year. The first 6 months their skin was rubbed with olive oil and myrrh, and the last 6 months it was treated with perfumes and cosmetics. Each of them spent the night along with King Xerxes. When a young woman went to the king, she could wear whatever clothes or jewelry she chose from the women's living quarters. In the evening, she would go to the king, and follow the morning, she would go to the place where his wife stayed after being with him. There a man named Shashagaz was in charge of king's wives. Only the one the king wanted and asked for by name could go back to the king. Xerxes had been king for 7 years when Esther's turn came to go to him during Tebeth, the 10th month of year. Everyone liked Esther. The king's personal servant Haggai was in charge of the women. The Esther trusted Haggai and asked him what she ought to take with her. Xerxes liked Esther more than he did any of the other young women. None of them pleased him as much as she did, and he immediately fell in love with her and crowned her queen in place of Vashti. In honor of Esther, he gave a big dinner for his leaders and officers. Then he declared a holiday everywhere in his kingdom and gave expensive gifts. Mordecai saves the king's life. When the young women were brought together again, Esther's cousin Mordecai had become a palace officer. He had told Esther never to tell anyone that she was Jew, and she obeyed him, just as she had always done. Bigthana, the Teresh were the 2 men who guarded King Xerxes' room, but they got angry with the king and decided to kill him. Mordecai found out about their plans and asked Queen Esther to tell the king what he had found out. King Xerxes learned that Mordecai's report was true, and he had the 2 men hanged. Then the king had all of his written down in his record book as he watched. Esther 3. Haman plans to destroy the Jews. Later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, to the highest positions in his kingdom. Haman was a descendant of Agag, and the king had given orders for his officers at the royal gate to honor Haman by kneeling down to him. All of them obeyed except Mordecai. When the other officers asked Mordecai why he disobeyed the king's command, he said, "Because I am a Jew." They spoke to him for several days about kneeling down, but he still refused to obey. Finally, they reported this to Haman to find out if he would let Mordecai get away with it. Haman was furious to learn that Mordecai refused to kneel down and honor him. And when he found out that Mordecai was a Jew, he knew that killing only Mordecai was not enough. Every Jew in the whole kingdom had to be killed. It was now the 12th year of the rule of King Xerxes. During Nisan, the first month of the year, Haman said, "Find out the best time for me to do this." The time chosen was Adar, 12th month. Then Haman went to the king and said, "Your Majesty, there were some people who lived all over your kingdom and won't have a thing to do with anyone else. They have customs that are different from everyone else, and they refuse to obey your laws. We'd be better off to get rid of them. Why not give orders for all of them to be killed? I can promise that you will get tons of silver for your treasury." The king handed his officer ring to Haman, who hated the Jews, and the king told him to warn you what with those people. You can keep their money. On the 13th day of Nisan, Haman called in the king's secretaries and ordered them to write letters in every language used in the kingdom. The letters were written in the name of the king and sealed by using the king's own ring. At once they were sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of each province, and the leaders of the different nations in the kingdom of Xerxes. The letters were taken by messengers to every part of the kingdom, and this is what was said in the letters. On the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month, all Jewish men, women, and children are to be killed, and their property is to be taken. King Xerxes gave orders for these letters to be posted where they could be seen by everyone all over the kingdom. The king's command was obeyed, and one of the letters was read aloud to the people in the walled in city of Susa. Then the king and Haman sat down to drink together, but no one in the city could figure out what was going on.